All right, what's up, everybody? Kristian here once again. Another solid episode of the Sober Identity Podcast coming right at you. I've got my trusty LaCroix in hand. I'm just soaking up some of this Spokane weather we've had. We've been hit with like I don't know, 3, 4 inches of snow, something like that. So it's been pretty entertaining to watch the people who can't drive on this stuff. But anyways, I say this all the time, but I'm super stoked to have today's guest. And we got a really cool story behind kind of how we met and everything like that, which we'll get into here shortly. But this guy's been rocking it in the sober world. I actually came across his Instagram page as I was perusing a lot of different sober profiles. I really, really enjoy his page. I can't wait for him to talk about it because it's one of my favorites in the sober community in Instagram. But come to find out, this dude lives in the exact same city that I live in. So we sent some direct messages back and forth. Come to find out, we live pretty close, and we've kind of started to develop a little bit of a friendship here in town, which has been so cool because I'm certain that many of you who are going through sobriety or trying to cut alcohol out of your life, it's really hard to find other people who are also going through that same program. And so stoked to have someone of this caliber here in town who's also gone through the same process, and super stoked to hear his story today. But I'd like to bring him on right now. I introduce you to Brenton Sconce. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, Kristian, I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on. This is great.
Yeah, this is so cool. So kind of the backstory, like I was telling you guys earlier, and how we met. We actually had a really fun time recently. It was actually right after New Year's Eve here locally out in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. They do a really fun event called the Polar Bear Plunge. Essentially, everybody jumps in Lake Coeur d'Alene. I think the water temperature that day was 44 degrees or something insane, and so Brenton reached out to me. He's like, dude, you should. I saw he was going to go do this, and he's like, dude, you should join me on this. And I thought, yeah, what a beautiful opportunity. It was something for me that was so cool to signify 2 years of sobriety for me personally. So I told Brenton, I said, man, what a cool idea. I'll bring my kids. I have no idea if they want to jump in that water, but we'll see what happens. So it was so fun to hang out with you, obviously, Brenton, and kind of do that and also meet some of your family too, which is way cool.
Yeah, no, that was such a cool time. And when I found out that it was your 2 year like soberversary too, I was like, this is perfect. Like, how much more epic can you get to, celebrate by just jumping in with, nothing but your skivvies on in freezing cold water. I mean, it was awesome. And yeah, getting to meet you and your girls, and it was just really cool. And like you said, I think the whole aspect of community and finding people that you connect with on this journey is immensely important. And it's one of those things that I think we harp on a lot in the sober community, is like finding your community, finding your tribe, finding your people, and the reality is that's just a fact of being human. But I think there's something really special and unique when folks who are traveling same journey, right? That like the destination's the same, the journey might look a little bit different, but our destination is the same. And so when you find somebody that's kind of on that same trek, I think there's a special kind of bond there that really makes those relationships work really well. And yeah, and I think that's, you and I kind of hit it off right off the bat, and found a love of basketball and doing hard things and jumping in cold water and eating good food and all that stuff. So yeah, that was a fun New Year's. I'll definitely not forget that one.
Yeah, it was so cool because you talk about that community piece. For me, I felt like I was already connected to you, even though I have no idea who you were, this and that. It was just so cool because I had I had a name to the face, to the page, also on the sober journey. Like we have that thing in common. And then obviously, to set that up for two guys that have never met each other and to go meet with our families to boot, like, a lot of people have a hard time getting out of their comfort zones, and me included. So that was a thing for me where I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I've never met this dude, but we already have something in common that we can bond off and talk about. And if anything, we're going to go do something really fun that's going to be completely out of our comfort zones too. And that cold plunge concept has been so nice and something that I've personally used as a tool just through my own sobriety / kind of emotional journey throughout. It's just so fun to just go and do something like that, because sitting in that water, there was like all of your concerns and worries just dissipate immediately, because it's like all you're doing is like surviving in this water and like looking around at all these other people hooting and hollering. And, our kids are like, what's dad doing out there? Like, this is crazy. It was just so fun. And what a cool way for you and I to connect in that regard. Now, as far as community goes for you, did you find that you started to build a community around this sober journey, if you will, just through your online connections, or were you able to actually tap into something locally as well?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I would say the importance of community, and when I started to see it really kind of take shape in my journey was, I went the rehab inpatient, outpatient treatment route. That's kind of where my sober journey begins, right? And everyone's story is different, obviously, and you got to find what works for you. For me, that's where my story started, and some of the relationships that I actually built there, in the treatment facility, and then I'm continuing on outside of that, have continued to this day. Some 2.5 years into this thing now, but that's really where the aspect of community really struck home. Was I was able to find that crazy connection, like you talked about, with some other guys and gals, and so I knew that was like hugely important, and just knowing that they were there, essentially just down the street to be there. We're on the same journey. I can call them at any point if I need them. There's that connection there. That's kind of where it started. And then I did the whole AA thing for quite a while. I still go to meetings when I can. I'm not as involved in that as I used to be, but that was a part of it too. And that was more of the kind of one-time immersion of community, meaning like I would go once a week to a meeting, and just jumping into a room full of people that understood. They understand where you're coming from. They've all been there. And again, kind of like what I was saying, all of our destinations are pretty much the same. And you sense that when you step into that room. And so although I didn't develop like lasting relationships in those rooms, with the folks there, there's just something special about stepping, I think, into a room, whether that's AA or any other kind of recovery support, sober support room. There's something special about stepping in that space with multiple people that can relate to your story to some degree. And then following that, I was probably a year into my journey when I started office recovery, and then that really just kickstarted it. And then, to be honest, from that point forward, I still have the relationships I have from my treatment center days. I still have relationships with the folks in AA, but then the sober community online especially has been massively important, and just feeling the support and the warmth and the care. And then at the same time, like meeting those people that are willing to kind of challenge you as well. And you build a relationship enough with them to know that they're not, just hiding behind a keyboard attacking, but they're actually lovingly challenging the way you think about things, and all of that. All the stuff that makes relationships great. I found that in the sober community online, and that has been absolutely massive, and a huge reason why office recovery is still going. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love all that. That's so neat. And, obviously I want to get into you mentioning the office recovery page, because I just think your concept is just pure magic. But I wanted to go back. You mentioned AA, you mentioned rehab. What, my first question is, what brought you to that point of going that direction to rehab, so to speak? And then my follow-up question is, for people who are listening, to if they think they're either maybe kind of deep down know they probably need to head to more of a structured rehab program, or they want to head to AA, can you kind of touch on both of those?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, in my journey, the pursuit of alcohol really, the alcohol was really always there in my early adulthood life, but it was always very much a social thing. I went through some pretty traumatic kind of life experiences in my early 20s, and then again in my early 30s. And those kind of two huge milestones for me were what kind of shaped and drew me to alcohol as a coping mechanism. I started having a lot of issues with really identity. Who am I? What am I if I'm not this? There was a lot of real core-seated, deep-seated identity questions. There was a ton of feelings of failure. And that's a whole nother topic that I can dive into at some point. But anyway, all of that kind of just rolled together to the point where I would say in, 2020, let's see, was it 2020? Yeah, 2020 was really where it started ramping up. And I quickly found that drinking would provide not only that escape and kind of obviously the numbing of not having to deal with those feelings, those emotions, those thoughts of failure, those thoughts of not living up to my own expectations or the expectations of others. I quickly figured out that alcohol could do that. And then it also morphed into this, I think it's giving me the ability to show up in the world the way that I think I should show up. And it never actually does that. It usually does the opposite, but you think that. And so it escalated super quickly. And it got to a point where there was a physical necessity for it, to where it was starting to shape my behaviors. I found that I was lying, I was stealing, I was doing all these things just to be able to get the next drink. And it's at that point where there was, in the recovery community, especially, they kind of call it a moment of clarity, where there's usually something that happens, or there's this moment where for the briefest time, you sense what's going on and you kind of sense where you're at. And that came for me in July of 22. There was an event that happened, and there was a moment of clarity where I was driving in the car, and I realized what I was becoming. And I kind of got a glimpse of what the future would be if I kept going down this path. And so at that moment, I picked up my phone, I texted my wife and said, I think I'm an alcoholic and I need help. In that moment of clarity, I also reached out to another buddy of mine who had himself just gone through treatment about 6 months prior. And so I was able to connect with him, and I just said, hey, I need to get help. I know myself well enough to know I'm not going to be able to do this on my own. And so that's why I went the rehab route, because I was like, I need to forcibly get myself in a situation where there's no other option but sobriety. And then I quickly found, once I was there, that it's so much bigger than just abstaining. It's so much bigger than getting tools to just not drink, right? Because then I start going into therapy sessions, and I start dealing with all the emotions, all the identity questions, all those things. And that all kind of came out of that. And so that's kind of where that story starts with the rehab side of things. I think, only, in giving advice or talking about whether folks should go kind of the rehab treatment center route, the AA route, you can only answer really that for, obviously for yourself. But I think if there's even just the slightest kind of hitch in your spirit about, I really can't control this thing. Like, this thing has its hooks in me so deep. I'm seeing that I'm acting and thinking in ways that I never thought I would do before. Or, you see some of those behavioral changes of like, this isn't me, but it's who I'm becoming. I think in those kinds of situations, I think realistically thinking, do I need to go somewhere where I can get not only the required time to become sober, like, physically abstinent and free from drink, but also get some of those tools and the foundations laid for you to be able to work on what's really behind the drinking. Like, what's the why behind the drinking, and why do you go that route? So I'd say if there's any like shadow in your mind of like, I can't control this thing, give rehab a thought, and give it a glance and see if it might be something for you. Talk with some folks that have been through that journey that way and see what they say. When it comes to the AA side of things, I have a lot of friends who have never done it. I have a lot of friends who swear by it. And again, I think it's really what works for you, like, and how it's working for you is not just that you're not drinking, but that you find yourself beginning to build a life that you don't want to escape. That you find yourself living out of this place of joy and deep, like, rooted happiness and satisfaction in who you actually are. And so if AA can help get you there, that's a great place to be. Like I said, you find a community of people that are all moving that direction. And so I think it can be a really, really good option. For me, I was very much like, I'm an all or nothing guy. And so for me, I was like, if I'm doing this sobriety thing, I'm going to tackle and take on everything that I possibly can. If it has been said to be helpful in somebody's journey, I'm going to try it and see what happens. And so I did the AA route and did the 12 steps and all of that. And I did find it helpful for me for a long time. And it still is helpful for me. But there's been some other tools that I've kind of added to the toolbox. But yeah, if you're looking for community, if you're looking for a little bit more structure and something that has kind of a historicity to it, proven track record, AA is a good place to go to. Yeah.
Well, first of all, I want to, I'm so proud of you for being able to send that message to your wife as a, hey, I need help moment, because I feel, and I know that from an extent of just how hard that truly is to finally admit that something is terribly wrong with you to somebody else. And that is a level of vulnerability that most people are terrified to go down that path, right? Of like, hey, I need help. And certainly for men, that's the toughest thing, right? We're supposed to be this rock solid pillar for our families and for ourselves and for everything in this world, where we cannot show our emotions. We got to hold all that shit in. And I think it's so powerful for people to hear that you finally knew and you took action, you sent that message, you reached out for help. That is huge, because that starts the transition, right? And for the longest time, I so can relate of, I deep down knew I was pushing the limits too. My gut kept saying, you gotta be careful. You're gonna do something wrong. And, before you know it, the same type of time frame, you and I, very similar, that 2020 range was where like there was still some COVID remnants. There was just like a freedom to just do whatever the hell you wanted. And I fell in the same trap, Brenton. It was game on, man. And I spun it as I'm just having a good time, right? I have the free time. I took pride in the weirdest way of, like, it was like a game to me in my head. Drinking became a game in certain standpoints. And certainly during COVID, it was like, oh yeah, I can go crush, a 12 pack of mango White Claws in my apartment. And I'm like drunk dialing my friends, and I'm thinking, this is so fun. I'm having some cool conversations with my buddies, and I'm catching up, and life is so good. And I was just on that cycle over and over. And people are watching from afar, and everyone's afraid to say something too. That's the other piece, right? It's like,
Yeah.
that's a very touchy subject, as we know in the sober community. When you talk about people's drinking habits, it is you got to brace for some verbal assaults if you're not careful.
Yeah.
So kudos to you. I just want to reiterate that is so awesome that you were able to do it yourself versus someone dragging you by the coat and saying, hey, Brenton, you are ruining your life, pal. Get your ass into rehab. So that's so awesome you did that. And I like your explanation on both sides, because I'm always curious what people have done. I personally I didn't do rehab. I have been to multiple AA meetings strictly out of curiosity, because I was struggling with just classic me white knuckling my way through anything I do, right? Tunnel vision, I handle this, I do it. And it's exactly how my sober journey was exactly like that. Just, I'm going to hang on for dear life. I'm not going to reach out to people. In reality, I had some people that were supportive, so to speak, but in reality, it wasn't that same type of rock solid support that you truly need to be surrounded by. So I appreciate your perspective on both, because I think it's something very beneficial for people that are listening. Like, well, what kind of route do I need to take if I'm really, really deep into this? So I like that a lot. Now, following up on that, so you get into rehab, you've done all this kind of thing. Did you ever fall off track? Did you ever relapse? Was this you got in and now you're on a very nice path that you've kept consistent? How has that been going for you?
Yeah. It's been consistent. Yeah. There hasn't been any relapses. There's a couple of things with that that kind of, come to my mind. One was once I got through detox, right, my head started clearing a little bit. Again, kind of very much all or nothing. And so I was like, I'm going to give this thing everything it's got. Because again, I, in that moment of clarity, really saw the trajectory of where I was headed. And so I remember at one point thinking, if this is the trajectory I'm going with drinking, could the opposite be true if I don't? And so I was like, what if I actually leaned into that? And what if I actually leaned into figuring out the why behind why I'm doing this, and what would that look like? And early on, going to like therapy sessions and stuff, there was some stuff that was starting to get unpacked that even in those early days were so revolutionary to me that I almost instantly like felt the change. Like, and healing's a process, like, and it takes a long, long time. But there are these little moments where I could feel this little switch in my soul that gave me just enough hope to be like, okay, let's keep going. Like, let's keep moving forward. The next right thing, the next right thing, the next right thing. And so that's kind of how it's been ever since I kind of stepped out of the doors of rehab. It's just kind of been taking that next right step. One of the things that, there's two things that I really appreciate when it comes to the kind of the concept of relapse. One is that a relapse, doesn't destroy the work that you've done, that you're starting not over again, but starting again with experience, right? And so I'm a big believer in that. And I'm a huge proponent of grace, a huge proponent of mercy, and a huge just proponent of hope. And so for those who have walked this journey, if there's been moments of relapse or times of relapse, like if you're still drawing breath, there's hope for you, and you can keep moving forward, and you can take the next right step, and you can figure out what's going to work this time. That, when you start doing the deep thinking of like, okay, what was it that caused the relapse, right? Because you got to go all the way back to like the way that you were thinking, the way that you're feeling, and then you're planning for it, and then you act on it. And so you start tracing those things back, and you can figure it out, and then you can move forward in confidence, knowing that you kind of understand that side of things. The other side of it, and the other side that I embraced immensely, was the concept that relapse actually doesn't have to be a part of recovery. And by that, I mean this. There's a saying out there that, essentially relapse is kind of part of the journey, right? It's kind of this thought of like part of the healing journey is this stuff. For me and for my mindset, and because I know who I am, so again, this is very much my story, I embrace the concept that it's not going to be a part of my story. Like a part of my story is going to be just consistently, constantly, slowly moving forward every day, momentum, always working on it, always progressing. And so what worked for me was like, that's not even a thought. Like, that's not going to be a thought. And when there are moments like, and I've had to put in a lot of work to get to this level, but recognizing, right, the triggers, recognizing where my brain's at, where's my headspace at? Like, am I in a good headspace? Where are my emotions at? Because like those are the steps that lead to relapse. And by the grace of God, I've been able to, catch moments like that early enough, and then, adjust my thinking, adjust my emotions, like deal with all of that so it doesn't go any further. So those are kind of my two things on when it comes to kind of the relapse story. But I haven't relapsed, and so I'm like 932 days, I think, today straight with nothing. So yeah.
Isn't that amazing to say that? 900 plus days. You haven't touched a drop of booze, man. Congratulations. I mean, that's an incredible feat, right? Like even, yeah.
It struck me the other day that like now my sober time is longer than my active addiction. Like now, granted, I had drank since my early 20s. So, in whatever, 10, 15 years, then it will have outpaced that. But my like real active addiction where it was super, super heavy, my sober time has now surpassed that. And that is like, that's really cool. That feels really good. Yeah.
But yeah, I feel it through my veins for you, my friend. Like, it's just like, man, to point out that, that the time comparison, it is so true. And that is something that I have also found from that gratitude standpoint of like, it's been how long since I had a drink? Like just that alone, like regardless of anything you've done in that time frame, to always turn that down every day for that many days. I mean, most people can't do that with some of the most simplistic things, right? You talk about like, oh, I'm not going to eat sugar for a while. People last like 30 days and then they crumble. Or I'm going to run a mile every day. Then 2 weeks goes by and they're done. For you to pull that off and for the rest of the sober community to do it, it's a massive feat. And that's why it's so fun being part of that community on social media. It's so uplifting. Anytime you can hop on there and you'll see another milestone be hit by somebody. Like someone goes 15, even if it's 2 weeks or if it's 10 years, everybody piles in and it's like, congratulations, keep it going. You're a badass. And it's just like, it makes you feel so good. So I love hopping on there every day. It's just, talking to obviously to you and the rest of the guys in that group, and then everybody else in the community, that is it just makes me smile every time, because yeah, we're all doing the same thing and we're all supporting each other. Why wouldn't you want to be a part of that community? So I think that's so cool. I wanted to touch back on the relapse thing, just for people who are listening to kind of understand what that truly even means. For some people, it means different things. Like, I look back at my sober journey, and it was a 3 to 4 year process. I've said this many times over, and I would describe it as a trial and error. You could call that relapsing. You could say, because I went where I hit a moment just like you of like, yeah, I definitely need to address this. I had that same type of moment. It was more internal for me. And I did tell people like, yeah, I need to take a break. It was essentially it. It wasn't like I need massive help. I need to not drink for a bit, clear my mind and see how this goes. And I go 6.5 months. And then that technically could be my first relapse, which, to describe my relapse, was more of a internal struggle of, if I can stop drinking this long, then I can certainly control it now. Right. That was my relapse moments typically. And then I'd go right back in the cycle, and then I'd go back to not drinking, and then something else would happen, or I just again feel like I can't live life without booze, relapse again, to then hate myself for doing it. So it's just like back and forth, but deep down I knew like, okay, let's stop relapsing. Let's just, like you said, and we are very similar. I'm starting to find out when it comes to when we set our minds to something, which I think is so cool. That's what I did too. I was like, okay, I'm going to go a full year. But deep down, I was like, I'm going to roll. Like, if I make it the year, it's game over. And it was, that was where, like you described, the good things really started to become good, and the clarity and the gratitude and the feel good, and just like the momentum just kept on rolling, and it's like, this is not a fluke. This is not a fluke. And you're so aware of what's happening around. And it's just so cool to notice all the little things. I think for, guys like us and anybody else that's sober, you really start to pick up on those little things in life. I'm certain you're a family man and you have kiddos. You just notice the nuances in your kids differently versus, daddy just walking around with the IPA in hand, like, waiting for the next NBA basketball game to happen. You just be like, yeah, you can have Cheetos for dinner, like whatever, and that was a lot of the time for me back in the day. And so it's so nice to just sit in a peaceful state, having worked on all those emotions, like you talked about, sitting at the dinner table with your kids. They are saying different words that they didn't say a week ago, and you catch that. You actually soak that up and go, hey, Addie, would you learn that word? And it's so neat to be that plugged into life. And that's something that I like to bring up every time. And it's like, do you want to keep alcohol here or do you not? And it's like, you're always numbing some part of your life out if you keep this substance involved. And I don't care if it's the one drink a night or one drink every few months, that is just going to take that. It's going to numb that experience out, and your presence is now ripped away from you every single time. And so how have you seen that, spinning it in with your family? How has you, now being the man, the pillar of the family, now that you are a sober individual, feeling like the new you, if you will, how has that translated into your family life?
Yeah, I think that there's been a ton of change, and a ton that could be said to be different. Early on, like in my marriage and even early parenting, I would always be kind of like the patient guy. Like my wife would always be like, you're always so patient. You're always so patient. Well, in active addiction, that went away. I was super, just absent and then super irritable and, grumpy. And like, if you've been there, you know what I'm talking about. And that's come back. Like the patience has come back, not the irritability. The patience side, but even probably exponentially more so. But there's this patience. There's like what you were talking about. There's this incredible like beauty in the simplest, smallest moments and like the minute details that you catch in sobriety, that again, those moments are like the little building blocks that add to like your why of not going back to drinking. because you catch those little moments, that little smile that your kid had, that little laugh that they had as they're playing whatever, or, the little comments that they'll make, like those little beautiful moments that I would have missed. Even though I was physically in the room, I was not present. Those little things are worth it. Like that alone makes it sobriety worth it, much less everything else that comes with it. But yeah, I've definitely seen like a massive change in just my presence, my ability to think like long term and down the road has returned. And if you know anything about the neuroscience of drinking, like all of that gets shut down, right? And you're very short term, very front face thinking, and that's all returned. And it's so fun for me to actually like have thoughts on my own of like, hey, what are we going to do for this summer? 6 months out or a year out from now, or what's this birthday party going to look like, or like things like that. Now, granted, I'm still a dude and I've got a wife that is much better at that than I am.
Right.
But I'm growing in it. And like little things like that actually bring me so much joy. Like to be able to know that I'm stepping in as a father, and actually helping carry the load of parenting the way that I think it should be done, at least the way that we're doing it in our home. And so to be able to do things like that, I mean, that's incredible. Just and then just being able to hold and recognize the capacity for love for my family has just grown. I mean, I'm able to experience receiving their love, giving my love in a way that I never have before, and it's those kinds of things that make, even just a simple life so epic. And I wouldn't trade that for the world either.
Yeah, I totally agree. That is the one thing that makes this an absolute no-brainer of why would I ever turn back to being a drinking individual ever again? Because I love the clarity. I love being present. I love to be on the top of my game. Both you and I are sports guys, basketball guys. Like I've always appreciated, people being at the top of their game, right? That saying, be at the top of your game. And alcohol always pulled me away from being at the top of my game. I thought, like you mentioned earlier in this pod, of like, yeah, when I was drinking, like I thought I was at this certain level and I thought that's the person that I needed to bring to the table, right? Because society taught me that I was a shy individual. Pile on a couple beers, Kristian becomes really fun, man. I didn't know you were so fun and outgoing. Wow. And then I was like, oh, this is magic. People like me. And so it becomes a very addictive process. Yeah, removing that and just seeing things from that completely different lens. What a game changer, and for your kid and for your family to see that person show up. I mean, you can't top that. It's a wonderful thing, and you bring so much more presence and patience. And we need it. We've got little ones, and there's days where I remember like I would be hungover trying to parent my children. It was a disaster. Those kids can read and they can feel the energy off of you. It's amazing. Yeah. I remember it well. It was one of the worst days of my life. I was so hungover, and that kicked off my first stint to sobriety. Actually, I went, this is my rock bottom moment. I am here completely wrecked. Brenton, I was staring at the clock every 10 minutes, hoping that it was bedtime. I mean, it was the saddest thing. And I said, this is it, man. Like this, you're better than that. You can't be this. Like you're supposed to be much better than this. Why would you do this to yourself, let alone your poor little kids? So it is nice to have them as our, the people that we measure ourselves up to, of like, be that parent, be that individual you want your kids to be around. And I think it's so neat that you're doing that for your family too. So kudos to you for that.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Yeah. What's kind of your daily routines now that you're settled into sobriety? I know you're obviously doing a lot. I'm paying attention to what you're posting. You're a great writer. You've obviously got Office Recovery going. Like, walk us through what Brenton does, when he wakes up in the morning to kind of keep himself on this amazing path that you're on.
I've got routines. Like one of the things that kind of came out of my experience, really in the rehab world, but then I've seen it all over the sober world, regardless of, rehab or not, is routine and a schedule, and how important, building those good habits back into your life are. And so for me, that's looked a lot like waking up early. I absolutely, I don't do it every day because I am human. But most days I try to get up early. I get up before everybody else. And usually I'll try to start out the day with like some reading, some journaling before I ever get on my phone, other than shutting my alarm off. Like I'll get into that. I'll get my cup of coffee going. I'll do some reading, some journaling. And then I usually start the day before everyone else is awake. I'll turn on, this is probably going to reflect my age a little bit, but I might turn on like some jazz, like some smooth jazz
Yeah,
on,
buddy.
and just in the dim lights, like I'll go do a quick mobility workout. I'll do a quick little body weight thing, be like, 20, 30 minutes, something just to get the blood flowing, get the brain kind of activated. And then usually at that point, I'm ready to go clock in for my work day. And so I usually start work for about an hour, and then take time off, grab breakfast with the kiddos. They're usually up by that point, and, get breakfast with the kids. And then I'm back to work. And then I'm usually working till mid-afternoon. And I usually do another workout set if I can get it in right afterwards, after my work day. And then usually if it's like family day, like my wife's not working, then we're just hanging out, or we're going to grab dinner, or, something like that. Days that she works, I'm making dinner for the boys. And then we usually have like dance parties, and we have Lego build offs, and we're pirates, and we're whatever we're into for that season. And then it's just an hour and a half of just full on the ground, rolling, playing, messing around, wrestling with them. And then it's bedtime for them. And then after that, then I'm usually right in at school. Like I'm in the middle of getting my MBA right now. And so that's the time that I have to do my schoolwork. And so I'm doing an hour or two every night, getting that degree. And then, and then I call it a day. So that's kind of what my day-to-day looks like now. Obviously it'll change as I graduate in June, and, all those kinds of things. But to your kind of big question and big point, for me, it's been about routine. And what's so helpful for me is especially are those early morning hours, like before everyone else gets up, and spending some time on me. And that forever, like I never would have said that, because I would have been like, that is so selfish of me to say that. You're supposed to be this husband and this dad that just gives. Well, you can't pour from an empty cup, right? That's the cliche. And so I've just made it a priority. I'm like, okay, again, not every time, but for the most part, I'm going to get up before everyone else. I'm going to work on myself so I can show up and be the best husband and the best dad and the best employee and the best student that I possibly can be. And so that's why I'm reading, why I'm journaling, why I'm getting some movement in, moving my body and working out, sipping good coffee, listening to good music, like all these things that just kind of fill me. I do that every day, regardless of the day, unless I'm really up late writing a paper or something, then I'll sleep in a little bit. But that's my routine, man. Yeah. Day in and day out, pretty much. So.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's perfect. It's something that is so vital, because if we just sit around thinking about why we're not drinking, for example, or being bored, or, I hear that a lot of people like, oh, I tried to stop drinking, but it was just too boring. It's like, well, there's no routine, there's no hobbies, there's nothing that's really given you some joy where you are filling up your cup and looking at some different things. So I think that's so cool. I'm trying real hard to, routines for me are a little trickier just because I am out of town a lot. So I have tried to narrow it down as best I can, but I'm with you. Like if I can get up, and I love journaling. I didn't realize how much I loved it until I started doing it the last couple of years. And for me, some of the best journaling I've done is sitting on an airplane, because it's just there. You're in this tube. There's nothing else to focus on. It's like you can kind of check out and be in your own little bubble for a couple hours. I find that to be the most therapeutic thing. So I used to stress about my job. Now I laugh because it's like I'm more stressed at home because I'm running after my kiddos and doing this, doing that, trying to accomplish a bunch of things. But I go there and I do, I try to journal, and exercise is vital, and I'm finding that not just exercise, but getting outside and exercising. Like that has been so amazing on so many levels. I just went and did a cross country ski race with my dad.
Yeah.
And there was something about that. Obviously the athlete in me, the competition, but being outside, pushing my body in the woods, in the snow, boy, I finished that race. I was exhausted, but I just felt phenomenal. Like just my emotional state, I just felt so centered, so at peace, just a big grin on my face. And I told myself, I'm like, you would have never done this because guess what? You had been too hungover to show up. Number one. Number two, you would have never planned it because you'd always put alcohol on the forefront of your mind and first thing on your calendar, and then start counting down the days of like, okay, I'm going to drink these days. I'm going to be hungover here. It's going to take 3 days to recover. That was how I started to plan my life. And now I flip flop that where it's like the daily routines. I've got one of those big ass calendars, they call it, for 2025.
The Jesse Eisler one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I started filling that out with the girls, and I told them, I said, this is the first time I've ever done something like this. And it is so cool to have this magical paper. It's right behind me. And we've already mapped out like multiple trips we're doing, and you can actually have a visual and go, wow, my life is filling up with so many cool experiences. And guess what? None of the vacations are going to involve alcohol, because previous to that, boy, I'd be the guy at the airport bar. I'd be sitting having cocktails on the flight over. I'm having a beer once I land. It was just alcohol, constantly checked out, and not really truly enjoying what that vacation is all about. And so now that that's out of the picture, like I'm planning vacations differently as well. I mean, I've got stuff where I'm like, I can't wait to go do this or go eat this food or go see that or take my girls. We went to Maui last year and it was the coolest thing. We went to the top of Haleakala and the girls loved it. It was like magic for me too. I'm like, this is so cool. I'm walking up to the top of this beautiful view, feeling great with my girls. They're loving it. I mean, that's what vacation and those times should be all about.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
It's been the neatest thing. So kind of went on a tangent on that, but I love that thought of just having those new ways of living life. So I'm always curious what guys and gals that have sobered up, like, what are you doing with your time? It's always fascinating. But you were missing one very important thing, and I didn't hear that you ever pick up a basketball and shoot any hoops. So what's up with that, man?
Man, I try to. I would love to. It's hard for me to find time.
You?
It's hard for me to find time.
Do I need to come build you another hoop like I built my kids for Christmas? I'll put it out on your driveway, dude.
We'll put it on the driveway. I'll do it. Yeah, I try to. I'll take the kids up to the park. That's probably the times that I do it the most is, when we're at the park and stuff. But yeah, I need to. I need to get back into it because, man, it's something I'd love. Yeah, I just gotta get to it. So
yeah, I bring that stuff up because for me, just going back to who I was as a kid. Right. And that you talk about wrestling with your kids and stuff. It was so cool to hear you talk about that because you're going back to your roots of just like, I'm just roughhousing with my people as a kid. And that's something I've really focused on because, through the advice of therapy and everything else, like, okay, what are your true passions? What did you do as a kid? And Brenton, I literally walked around with my basketball. Like and I can remember exactly what they looked like. All the things. I don't know if you remember, I was telling the girls about this one. I think it was a Wilson ball. It was basically clear and it had the top view of Jordan coming in for like a dunk. Found it on, some dude was selling it on eBay. I was half tempted to buy it so I could show my girls, but like those things light me up. And that was like back in 3rd, 4th grade, bro. So I have made a point, like I'm shooting hoops. I got a hoop for the girls for Christmas. So we just put it out there. It is so cool to see your kids start to enjoy the sports that you enjoyed. Because I was like, daddy likes basketball, but like, I want you to figure out what you like. And so we've been out shooting and they're loving it. And I'm just tickled, man. I'm like, oh, it would be really neat to see them really start to excel in it and just have that passion for something, you know? And so I had to give you some crap for not shooting any hoops because it's total for me. I go to their practices now and I'm like, I wear my shorts and put my LeBrons on and I'm out there shooting jumpers and crossing my kids over and loving life. Right.
Right. No, it's a good reminder. I need to make that a priority because that's absolutely one of my loves. I mean, to your point, especially my, a childhood love of mine was playing basketball. And I mean, I was the kid, recording on VHS, like Nike dribbling commercials. Like, I don't know if you remember, they had those where it's all like black screen and then like the players were doing these crazy, like and one mixtape moves and stuff. And I would
Huh?
record it on VHS. I'm in like fifth grade, I'd record it and then I just play it back until I could do them, and then I'd pause it and then I'd do the move and like just so many crazy things like that. But yeah, I need to do it. I know my littlest one, he's 3. And we kind of do the same thing where we're like, just whatever you like to do. If you like sports, if you like music, whatever you do, we're like, I'm all in. And but he's picked up a basketball and he was dribbling first thing in the morning. Like everyone else is asleep except for me and him. And he's like dribbling in the kitchen, and I'm like, dude, that's really loud. Like, and so for Christmas, we found this ball online that's like basically foam, but it's like the size and weight of a basketball. They're really cool. And so I gave that to him for Christmas. And so he dribbles that thing around because it's like silent. So yeah, so he's the one that's saying that he's really into basketball lately. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, I need to get back into playing. I think once I'm done with school, schedule's going to lighten up, quite a bit because that's really kind of a big thing right now. And then, hopefully find some time to build that into my schedule. And yeah, and to that point, even with all the routine that I have set up for my day to day, I always try to I'm finding stuff that I bring me joy. And then I always try to find something that's just hard, something that's hard to do, something to challenge myself, something that gets me out of my comfort zone. Whether it's cold plunging or, I've got a big event that I'll be making public and announcing in a couple of months. And I'll be announcing it on my office recovery page, but it's going to be by far the biggest, craziest, most insane thing that I've ever done. And I guarantee you probably that you've ever done as well. And so I'm going to make that news in a couple of months. So it's in the works. But that's going to be another thing that's going to be pretty time consuming, but still worth it. And I'm super, super excited to share that. So I just had to throw that out there, that little teaser. So.
Oh, man, I can't wait to hear what this is. I have like a bunch of ideas running through my head, but I am so like going to be on pins and needles to hear about this because I love this kind of stuff. And I've got some ideas of things I want to do in the future. And honestly, they involve very tall peaks. Like I want to climb some serious shit at some point in time. So I went on this whole like, binge on documentaries on Netflix the past couple of weeks, like anything I can find on any of the tall peaks. Like I'm fascinated by that challenge. But yeah, that's cool, man. That's really neat. I think that's a really neat idea is to do things that are fun, but also like a massive challenge. It gets you out of your comfort zone, but also creates a nice structure for you to, start going towards whatever this amazing goal is going to be. So that's so cool. Awesome. 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 I want to shift gears, but I do want to get your thoughts. When did you find out about the Luka trade and what was your initial reaction?
Man, I think I found out about it probably when most everyone did. I just saw it on a social media feed or ESPN account or something like that. And I think Dallas is. I'm usually respect Dallas and its leadership, right? And Mark Cuban, he's still there, right? He's still the guy. I mean,
I know Cuban sold. I know he sold the majority share of the organization, so I don't know how much involvement, but
yeah. But I mean, up to a certain point, they were masterful in their decisions, and this one, I was like, come on, like what in the world? And then by immediately following that thought was, man, Braun's doing everything he can to build that team up, and we'll see what happens. We'll see. I mean, there's been so many times, and the Lakers are my team, and there's been so many times where every year I'm like, this is it. Like, look at what they got. They're stacked. Like, they're undefeatable, and then it doesn't happen. So I'm not really holding my breath, but man, they look like they should be on paper pretty incredible. So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. I wasn't up because it happened like the night before, and I went to bed and I got a text from one of my buddies who's big sports nut too. He sends me this screenshot. I got out of bed and I was like, I'm sorry, what? I was
Yeah.
utterly shocked beyond belief. I've never been that shocked in my life since being a sports fan or an NBA fan. I couldn't believe it. But I will tell you, I'm so stoked. I think Luka's been outside of LeBron James, who for me, it goes Jordan and LeBron. Like I was hardcore. I've always been a big Jordan fan all the way, from childhood on. And once LeBron, I watched his first game, high school game. And I turned to my college roommate at the time and said, this guy is going to be unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like he is that good. Sure enough, we're 22 years later. The dude's 40 and he's still shredding the whole league. But Luka is one of those other guys I saw for the first time when he's playing in the Euro League and stuff. And I said, this guy's insane. He's going to be unreal. It was the same reaction, not as much of when I saw LeBron first, but Luka close second. It's going to be magic. And now he has a massive chip on his shoulder, and he's got LeBron to teach him how to take care of his body. Because I know the Mavs are really, really upset with him basically not conditioning or whatever the heck. It doesn't matter. The dude could sit and do whatever he wants. He's going to get a triple-double. The guy's a machine. But to put him on the Lakers, and now they traded for this other center, young guy on Charlotte, they're going to be fun, man. And I forgot that you're a Laker fan. So, I need to order my Luka jersey like today because that's going to be exciting.
It's going
to, So I had to ask you that. But no, and the other part here too is I definitely want to, if you're interested, is do Hoop Fest this year. And
I think that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Like you and I, we can recruit a couple other dudes. We'll never pass them the ball, but
No, not at all.
But we'll have to chat more about that later on. But I just want to finish up the podcast here. Obviously, you've got some passions and things in the works. What's your vision, in the next 5-year span, now that you're able to think in that regard? You're obviously finishing your degree this summer. You've got some cool stuff in the works. What's kind of that extended vision look like for you and your family moving forward?
So there's definitely a couple of things. I mean, part of the reason why I'm getting the degree is I've got a goal of forming a nonprofit that specifically works in the recovery space, but actually in particular, it's going to work partnering with like churches and ministry leaders and helping them develop robust and safe cultures for those in recovery or those that struggle with substance abuse to be able to integrate well into places of faith. And I think it's an area where I think churches historically have done a good job of taking care of those who are wounded and suffering because of their woundedness. I think that there's a lot of opportunity for them, for churches in general, to grow in the space of being able to care for those who, because of their addictions, do the wounding. And so I want to build out a platform that's going to be able to help create safe spaces for those who are struggling with mental health issues or substance abuse issues, to be able to come to a place that theoretically should be a source of hope and a source of joy and a source of life, to be able to come into places like that and actually experience that and actually be able to integrate into those spaces. And so, I'm a former pastor, so I have a lot of experience, and my heart's kind of in that direction, as well as having the experience of being on the substance abuse side of things. And so to be able to kind of integrate those two, that's kind of my long-term goal, is to found an organization that specializes in that. And then outside of that, I know my family and I want to travel some more, and we want to get out and do the whole RV or camper thing and just travel the country for a while and just see the sights and show my boys the world. And so that's kind of on the docket. And and those are kind of the big things right now. I mean, we'll see what happens. I mean, there's some really great plans that I've got thinking forward, but I'm a big proponent of really living in the moment and just loving life for what it's at and where it's at right now. And so while I've got plans and dreams for what the future is going to hold, I'm just enjoying life right now where it is. And if all that stuff, comes together and works out, that's great. Life is lifey a lot of times, and plans change, and that's okay too. But that's kind of long-term goals for me. So, and then I'd love to see, office recovery continue to move forward and just see what comes of that. And I enjoy writing. I enjoy speaking, all those things. I'd love to be able to contribute in the sober space in those ways as well at some point.
Yeah, and real quick, just elaborate on your office recovery page because we really haven't touched
Sure.
on it, and it's such a cool thing. So I'll give you the platform on that.
Sure. Yeah. So real quick, I mean, the idea came from really, it came from my experience in treatment where we would all gather around and we'd watch movies, and almost every single time it was a comedy that was selected. And it just kind of started, got me thinking of like, why are we going to humor? Like, what is it about humor that seems to kind of have this healing aspect to it that like all of us in this, in this recovery space in the treatment center, we're all jacked up, no more so than anyone else necessarily, but we're all jacked up and yet we're gravitating towards humor. And so I was like, there's got to be something to that. And so I started doing some research and I mean, lo and behold, there's a ton of massive benefits that come from humor. And in the sober space, what so many of us walk through and why we go to drinking, there's a lot of space for humor to speak into that. And so I was like, man, what's the funniest thing in the world? The Office, of course. And so I was like, I'm going to combine Office, memes, and sobriety or recovery. And so then Office Recovery was born and just started pairing, yeah, all things sobriety, mental health therapy, like all those elements together with Office memes, and there we are, and that's where it comes from. And the heart behind it all is really hoping that folks that engage with it, they'll get a chance to just smile, even if that's the only time they smile the whole day. My job's done. Like I want to just help people. I always say help people like smile, get through the moment, learn to laugh, and take the next right step forward. And I think if we can bring some laughter and joy into this journey, because recovery is hard enough as it is, sobriety can be very, very hard and very difficult. And there's a lot of darkness there. And it's not to diminish or negate any of that, but it's hopefully to bring a little bit of levity and joy into the journey. Because if you've made it this far, whether it's, 2 hours of sobriety or 20 years of sobriety, regardless of where you are, like the fact that you're breathing, the fact that you woke up this morning, there's joy to be found in that. And so Office Recovery is hopefully going to help remind people of that.
Yeah, if you're not following this page, you got to, guys and gals. It's hilarious. It's a wonderful, wonderful place to just go hang out and laugh about sobriety and just everything that Brenton's been putting together. Very, very brilliant, man. Kudos to you on that page. It's so fun. I love it. And he's also put together a really cool group called Dude Sober as well, which I'm also personally a part of. And Brenton and another gentleman's running that, and you're posting some really cool prompts, almost journaling prompts for a lot of us to think about, be like, oh yeah, cool, and everyone can respond. So just another cool thing to be connected into the group and the community. So if you're curious on that, Brenton's your man. Just send him a message on Office Recovery and I'll get you hooked up for that. So I could talk to you forever, man. This has been so awesome. I'm so proud of you, happy for you. I can just see it in your body language and the way you present yourself, man. You look like you're very content with where you were at, but also you're very focused and driven in some really cool areas. So I'm stoked to see what kind of things you're going to be up to in this year and in the years moving forward. So thank you so much for joining me today, buddy. I truly, truly appreciate it.
And thank you so much. Yeah, this was an absolute honor and yeah, a blast. I think we could go on for another 5 hours. So
But yeah, no, this won't be the last time. So stay tuned for more of this banter. But thanks again, buddy. We'll be talking to you soon.
absolutely. Thanks, Kristian.
All right, take care, man.